Hello, my name is Jeremy Barnes, and today I am going to do a review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I just watched the movie for my second time, so I thought this would be a good time to do my review. And although I liked it more the second time than I did the first time, I still don't think the movie is as good as it could have been. It's still like pretty cool overall, but I would say it's like middle ground in terms of my ranking of all of the MCU movies. Um, so definitely not what I was expecting from this movie. So on that note, it was a little bit disappointing. But my original rating after the first time watching it was a 7 out of 10. And after now watching it this time and appreciating it for what it is instead of like how it related to my expectations for the movie or what I was hoping to see, um, I think I might bump my score up to a 7.5. But either way, it's in that like C range. So I'm gonna break down my review into different sections, and I'm gonna start off spoiler free, and then I'll go into a spoiler talk at the end where I go into all the crazy details of everything that happens in this movie because there is a lot. So I'm gonna start with the story, and I would say that this movie is actually more plot based than any sort of like real good story. There's not a good story to it. And the main plot is basically a man protecting a young girl who's being hunted down in other movies by dangerous people, but in this one it's a dangerous person. Um, and minor spoiler, like I don't think this is too crazy of something to say here, but it wasn't clear from the trailers, so I am giving you a warning if you don't want to know anything. But the villain, like the person who actually is chasing this young girl, is last spoiler warning. One, two, three. Wanda Maximoff. So on the other hand, the plot is like on her side of things. Wanda hunting down America Chavez, who was the young girl, for her power to travel the multiverse. And Wanda's goal for doing this is that she could reunite with her children from an alternate universe because in WandaVision, when she created her children, that's all they were, just a creation of her mind. But in other universes, they actually do exist. And she discovered that from reading the Darkhold, which she got her hands on at the end of WandaVision. Um, so she cannot herself, Wanda cannot herself travel the multiverse like I thought she would be able to, being a Nexus being. But I think she does have a greater connection to her multiversal selves and just being able to manipulate things across different universes as a Nexus being. But she still needs America to actually travel the multiverse herself. So that's what her goal is in the movie. I would say if there is any like story to the movie, the closest thing I would say about what it is a man, Doctor Strange, learning to be content with what he has instead of dwelling on what he doesn't have or what could be better or different in his life. And that is something that runs through the movie, a common theme. And I would say that those themes might be a little bit too, like I guess on the nose or like just in the face. They're not subtle enough because a lot of the themes are repeated through dialogue several times throughout the movie. And the movie's not a long movie, so it gets to a point where it's kind of like, okay, we get it now. Like you don't gotta tell us every few minutes. But that's just a minor thing. Like I didn't really mind it too much. But now I'm gonna talk about the characters. And overall, I would say the characters were decent. It's a decent group of people. Um, None of them are like really my favorites. Of course, we have Doctor Strange, who unfortunately I think is cooler in ensemble movies like the one on my shirt, Infinity War. I'm wearing this shirt because I think is the only shirt I have that has both um, Doctor Strange and Wanda on it. Um, but I do think Doctor Strange works better in movies like this than in his own movies because I did not like the first movie at all, and it's because Doctor Strange's character in that movie, because he hadn't gone through that journey um, to become a hero yet. He was just a fucking asshole throughout the whole movie, so I just hated him. Like I hated his character, um, which says a lot about Benedict Cumberbatch's acting. Like he definitely did a good job portraying that. But yeah, but it was just too much for me. Like that, it made me not like the movie overall. So that's actually one of my least favorite MCU movies, and I like this one better than that. But him in it, I think, is like not as interesting as he is in the Avengers movies. So I would say the best character in the movie actually is probably Scarlet Witch. Um, but he did do some cool things though. But that's just how it is, you know. Um, and I think he was even better in Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange. Uh, so I don't know, but we also I'd say he doesn't go through much like character development, but there is a through line like where he is at a different place at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning. So there is something that changes throughout his journey of this movie. Um, and that journey is like one of like optimism. He becomes more optimistic and like kind of branches out into doing stuff for himself, his personal life, instead of just devoting all of his life to sorcery or protecting the world. Um, so that's kind of what his journey is in this movie. And then we're also introduced to a new character in this movie called America Chavez, and she is the one that has the ability to travel through the multiverse. And I would say this movie offered a good introduction to her, but her backstory could have been explored a little bit more than it was. It was like pretty much just like a tiny little glimpse of it, and like that's all it was. Like I'd say that she's more of a plot device than an actual character in this movie. But I do like the like vibrancy and the like energy of the actor portraying her. So she does have, I think, a lot of potential for the future. So I am excited to see more of her going forward. I would say the acting wasn't the best for her. Um, it was okay, but it definitely could be better. There's one specific moment that really stood out as like kind of cringy. And it's like something that she does with her body that wasn't the best like acting. Um, so that's all I'll say about that. But overall, I do like the actress. I think she is, like I said, like very charismatic. So that was good. And then, of course, the other big character in the movie on the side of Strange is Wong. And I would say that Wong, after we learned in Spider-Man No Way Home that he's the Sorcerer Supreme, I'd say that he's a great Sorcerer Supreme who takes his job very seriously. And because of that, he gets shit done as a Sorcerer Supreme, which I don't think we saw as much of with Doctor Strange in the Avengers movies, because I think he was the Sorcerer Supreme after the Ancient One died. Um, but he was kind of like, still doing his own thing, and he didn't really study as much about everything as I think Wong does. Even though he did like make the big play in Infinity War and Endgame, um, with the Time Stone, like obviously that kind of changed the whole course, and you could point the Avengers victory back to Strange. But other than that, like he didn't seem to be as into it, as Wong is. Like Wong takes his job really seriously, and when the threat arises in this movie, he calls out all the sorcerers because it's a huge threat, you know, threatening the entire multiverse. So he puts all hands on deck, which Strange did do in Endgame when we saw all the heroes and all the different factions come together. But I don't know. There's just a different energy to Wong as a Sorcerer Supreme that I think he does deserve that title more than Strange does. Um, the only thing that I would say Wong could be better at is that I think he could be a bit firmer in his stance. Like in Infinity War, the thing that really stood out with Strange is that in the beginning, he told Tony that if he had to, he would sacrifice him and Peter Parker, a kid, if it meant saving the Time Stone and not letting it get into Thanos' hands. He didn't end up doing that, but it's because he looked into the future or into all possible futures, and giving him the Time Stone was the one that would have worked out the best for their universe. Um, so he ended up giving it to him and sacrificing everybody that Thanos snapped away with within those 5 years that they were just gone, which included himself. But I feel like Wong, it didn't take him much for him to give in to the commands of Wanda, which I think is definitely a fault to him, like being a leader. Sometimes you have to sacrifice some people for the greater good, because Wanda was threatening the entire multiverse, but he was gonna give in to her just for, like, you know, a few sorcerers. But it does make Wong heroic because that is a heroic thing to do. But I don't know. I do think there has to be a bit, you know, stronger of not giving in to those types of commands, you know, negotiating with terrorists, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the last main character of the movie, and probably the best character, is the Scarlet Witch herself. And yes, she is a villain in this movie. She's the villain in the movie. And she's actually probably one of the best villains in the entire MCU. She's a very scary and like creepy villain, which she becomes by being consumed by the dark code. She's just read it too much, and that's all it does. It takes over your body and your mind. And man, she's super fucking powerful and relentless in her goals, and that makes her super dangerous too. Um, I was like kind of whiplashed by her character in this movie because of how evil she actually is. And after seeing WandaVision, where you know it was all bright and bubbly for most of it with the whole sitcom thing until the end, where it was like kind of depressing for Wanda, but she didn't seem like she would take such a dark path, and it was just like such a like fucking 180 that like it like I didn't even believe it at first. I was like, damn, what the hell is going on? What am I watching? But I guess it kind of makes sense. I do wish they would have went into it more, like her downfall, instead of just having the 180. I wish they would have shown like 90 degrees of that like transformation, to show us how she got there, you know. Um, and they didn't really go into the Darkhold's actual like control on Wanda or over Wanda. Like we don't know how it was manipulating her. We just know that it did. So I think that was a little bit lacking in the storytelling. Um, like we just gotta kind of assume and like connect the dots ourselves. But I don't think that's really fair to the audience. But anyway, I'm gonna now talk about the action or like the fight scenes in the movie, starting with the very opening. And that one, it was a chase with a like demon. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily like a multiversal demon, but either way, it's a demon of some sort. And I would say that it was decent overall. it was a cool setting, which was in the Gap Junction, which is a space between universes, and it's like a kind of key location in the movie. But in that scene, we also see the establishment of America Chavez's multiversal powers because it starts off with her and Strange together, but it's an alternate universe Strange, and they're trying to get the Book of Vishanti, which is the sorcerer's like book of legend that allows them to do or create anything that they want or need to from just thinking about it. Um, and this is something I think that has been like somewhat referenced in like the first movie and other places in the MCU, but it was nothing that we had ever seen until now. Um, but it's kind of like a end all be all sort of MacGuffin thing. What happens is that they get caught by the demon, and and that's kind of what starts everything in the movie because it's going to take America's powers, and like her powers activate when she's under extreme stress. So she opened up a portal, and they end up falling into it, her and Strange, and getting away from the demon, and they end up in the main MCU timeline or universe. And it was cool because there was a mirroring between this what is called Defender Strange and the main 616 Strange from the main timeline of the MCU, and some specific dialogue that happened in Infinity War, and that was pretty cool. Actually, was it in Infinity War? I think it actually might have been in No Way Home when he said that. Um, but it had to do with a sacrifice, and that was cool. One thing that was kind of weird about the beginning was that the first dialogue that we hear is in Spanish, and Doctor Strange speaks Spanish. And at first, I thought that it was gonna be completely in Spanish, which I think would have actually been better, but it was not. It was just like the first line. America asks Doctor Strange a question in Spanish, and then he responds in Spanish. But then he goes to English, and then they just speak English. So that I think that's what made it weird. Not that it was in Spanish, but that it was like they just said one line in Spanish, then the rest in English instead of just being one thing. Because I thought that Strange was just spoke Spanish, like that was his language. Um, but that wasn't the case. But I guess it was to establish America Chavez as Latina, and I don't know how it works in the comics, but I heard that like she's not really Latina in the comics because she comes from a place that is like outside of any world, called I think the Utopian Parallel, but that's not really explored. Like I said, her backstory is not really explored in this movie, so she could be Latina in the MCU version, where she does come from an Earth where that is a label that she has. Um, but I don't know why she's considered that in the comics if she's not actually like Latina, because she might not be human. I mean, I don't really know how all that works, but here it does seem like she is, and she does have a lot of human characteristics. So the Spanish is just I think to show that side of her. But yeah, I think that's the only time actually that she ever speaks Spanish in the whole movie, which also kind of makes it weird. But anyway, it transitions into like in the trailer when they go through the portal, a Strange waking up like if it was a nightmare. And he gets ready to go to Christine's wedding. She's getting married, and he's gonna attend. And that goes into the next action sequence, which is the arrival of Gargantos, the like octopus monster with one eye that we also see in the trailer, and that happens in like the New York City area. And when he goes from the wedding to this fight, and there's a cool civilian to superhero transition, like where his clothes change, And that was really cool. And he like floats down with the cape or the cloak of levitation. I mean, and that was really cool. And I think the monster itself, Gargantos, is a cool monster, and he had cool abilities, um, such as invisibility. And we see obviously because there's a threat there, Wong comes in, and it shows Wong's skills. That was really cool to see. Um, and Wong definitely stood out a lot in this movie. I think this is definitely the best appearance of Wong in the MCU, and he's increasingly starting to become, I think, like a bigger and bigger player in the entire universe, which makes sense because he is the Sorcerer Supreme now. So that's pretty cool to see. Um, and the way that they defeat Gargantos previewed another thing that surprised me about the movie, which is the gore of it. Like this movie is actually really gory for a PG-13 movie, and we see that with Gargantos because they defeat it by poking it in the eye and then pulling the eyeball out. So that was kind of crazy. And then the next fight is the one in Kamar Taj, which we see in the trailer, and this is when we first see the Scarlet Witch as a threat or an enemy. They try to use bargaining at first to de-escalate the situation, but it doesn't work. So then there's a full-on like battle that happens, and it's just Scarlet Witch versus all of the sorcerers from not only Kamartaj but from the London and the Hong Kong sanctums and New York obviously sanctums. Um, and man, Scarlet Witch just wrecks everybody. So this scene showed the sheer power of her and also like how far she was willing to go for her goals because she's just murdering them left and right. And the way that she wins or like actually breaks through the barrier that they're holding up, like an Endgame with the magic barrier, is that she gets in somebody's mind and like breaks their concentration. And she tells him to run, and he like just runs through everybody, which breaks everybody else's concentration, and she's able to blast through, and then it that's it. It's just over with. So that was really cool to see because I really liked Scarlet Witch's mental manipulation of the Avengers and Age of Ultron, and we didn't really see that since, except for at the end of WandaVision when she tried to get into Agatha's mind, but that one didn't work out as well for her. Um, so it was cool to see here, and it was also like a weirdly like erotic scene when she when she gets in the dude's mind because she tell the way that she says it is like sexy, and I don't know, that's just me, maybe just me being attracted to Elizabeth Olsen, especially as Wanda Maximoff, but no, I definitely think it was intentional. But I don't know, that was just kind of funny. Um, and then the next fight that I'm gonna talk about is the finale, and I feel like the fight itself then could have been better, but this is when we see Zombie Strange from the trailer, and everything with that made up for the lack of a fight. Like there kind of wasn't really a fight, but everything with Zombie Strange was just badass as fuck. So I kind of didn't even care. And I liked the ending overall. That's all I'm gonna talk about from the fights. Now I'm gonna talk about the horror because this movie was like Marvel's first kind of foray into like a full-on like horror movie, and it wasn't really horror. Like I still wouldn't classify the movie as a horror movie, like I would, like for example, New Mutants. I think that movie is a horror movie. This one is not. It's just a superhero movie with horror elements, but there are a lot of horror elements, and the whole vibe of the movie definitely fits with Sam Raimi's horror vibe, and all of that stuff was done really well. It was really good. I would say that it was more creepy than scary whenever it got into that horror stuff. And there might have been one or two jump scares. None of them made me jump, but it might have made some people jump. Um, and one of them actually made a character in the movie jump, which was kind of funny. And it was America Chavez. But I would say that the types of horror in this movie. There's like some body horror with like demonic warping, like how in The Exorcist or something like that, the body like twists and contorts. And I thought that was really cool. Some other things that they had in terms of the horror were creatures like the souls of the damned, obviously the zombie strange, and one thing I would say, or another thing I would say about the horror is just the vibes of it was really good, with the like music that they use and the transitions. All that stuff was really well done. And that kind of goes into my next category, which is like the direction of the movie. And I think that definitely had Sam Raimi's touch with that. Like they had a lot of crossfades. That was really cool with the transitions of like when Wanda was doing the seance or whatever. And that also ties into just the visual effects or just the visuals in general of the movie, which were all amazing. The camera movements, like I said, are crazy. They're really flowy and fluid, like the energy in a seance, like when Wanda does it. And that's kind of how the camera works a lot throughout the movie. Like it does a lot of like looping around people, and all of that stuff was really cool. Um, and now I'm gonna go into like some specific moments where the visual effects like really stood out, or just they did a lot of cool things visually in the movie. And then one thing about that is that I would say it wasn't as good actually visually as the first Doctor Strange movie, even though the movie overall, in my opinion, is better or I like it more. But the visuals in the first movie are like some of the best visuals, and not just the MCU, but probably in any movie like that I've seen at least. So it doesn't reach those levels, but they do some cool stuff in this movie. The first one is like the mirror dimension trap that Strange sets for Wanda in Kamar Taj, and like she freaks out kind of, like she doesn't know what to do when she's in there. There's just like mirrors everywhere, like she just sees herself everywhere. So she just like tries to break it, but it fucking makes the mirror like go towards her, where she almost impales herself. And then she tries to like blast it too with an energy bolt, but it just fucking like ricochets off of it, and that all that was really cool. And just in the temples of Kamartaj, all that stuff was really cool when Wanda was still trying to pursue America, and like most of the sorcerers outside are all dead or dying. Um, but there's a small group that is still with America, trying to get her to safety or keep her from Wanda. And that's when we see the whole body horror thing. She goes through like a fucking bell through the reflection of it. She used the reflections, and that was really well done. That was really dope. And then this transitions into the next crazy visual effect in the movie, which is when Strange and America actually travel through the multiverse, because once again she like opens a portal from stress from when she finally catches up to them, and Strange tackles her through it, so that Wanda doesn't get her. And that part was crazy. Like it happens so quick. It's like I don't even know, like 20 universes that we see in like a minute, or maybe even less than a minute. I don't even know how long it was. But the way it was done was really cool because we're following Strange in America in that whole time, and they're also like looping around because it's crazy. And then we see like the backgrounds change, and they did that in What If, but it was like obviously way fucking cooler seeing it in live action. Um, and and obviously there's more details in it. And What If it was very kind of more like like landscapes and kind of very like big shapes and not a lot of smaller details. So that moment really stood out a lot in this movie. I think that was actually probably one of my favorite things about it. And I just wish that we would have been able to see each of those universes more, like actually stay in a few of them. But in this movie, we only really visit one other universe, maybe 1.5. So that was another thing that I was kind of disappointed by. But that sequence itself, the little montage of traveling through, was really cool. Um, and then the next moment that was really cool was like the hallucinations or the dream walking that happens in the movie. And just the whole concept of dream walking is really cool. It's that like you could possess an alternate universe version of yourself, but it takes like immense power to do it. And like I don't even know if many people have even done it in the MCU. But that's what Wanda does to access her alternate self, the one that has her kids, and that was really fucking cool the way they did it, and that added to the horror aspect as well. Um, because it's kind of like a voyeur, like looking in on somebody else's life, but it's like just Wanda, which is kind of crazy, like how it works. Um, but it's like a ghost, like a ghostly effect almost. And all that was really cool. And then the other one was when we see Strange in America enter one of the new lands, and they also have a hallucination, and like the screen warps and stuff, and all that stuff is really cool. And another thing that Sam Raimi did a lot in terms of the direction in this movie was a lot of zooms on eyes and actually like going in eyes, which we also saw in the first movie too, I think. Um, and all that stuff was really cool and kind of gross. Like we saw it with Gargantos too. He had a fucking huge eye. So that stuff was pretty cool. I think it stood out to me in a good way. But that's pretty much all I'm gonna say for my non-spoiler part of the review. I guess I could give a little recap. So I would say that the story was weak overall. Characters were decent. The action and the fights were also like I would say decent. Weren't the best, but they did some cool things with it. And then I would say the horror was good. The visual effects were really well done. So overall, when you put that together, I would give the movie a C grade. But now let's talk full spoilers. So the one universe that they visit in the movie is designated 838 by Christine Palmer of that universe. So she's actually a multiversal um, like researcher. She actually works for the Baxter Foundation, which when I heard it, I immediately knew what it was. Fantastic Four, and I was like, oh shit, that means we're gonna get Mr. Fantastic. And I was spoiled by that reveal before I saw the movie, like briefly, but I didn't see who was playing him. I just saw like a Mr. Fantastic suit, but I didn't see his face, luckily. So that was still a minor surprise actually seeing him in the movie. But that was cool that they like teed it up that review with the Baxter Foundation shout out. Um, I would say that this Christine Palmer overall as a character was decent. She might be better than 616 Christine, but I don't really know because she is like different. I think she does more in terms of like the story or like the overall like MCU implications because the other Christine was just like a normal person. And she was cool for that reason. Like she grounded Strange in the first movie, and I did like her in the first movie. But after like Strange's accident, we just see a little bit of her before he then eventually goes to seek answers or to heal himself, and then she pretty much disappears in the movie. So I don't know because I think this Christine is also like colder than the 616 Christine, which I liked the temperament of that Christine. But here she's kind of like I don't know, like too serious, and she seems to have like a not a hatred, but like Um, I guess just not a good relationship or idea of Strange. Where even in the beginning of this movie, the 616 Christine seems very like content and cool with him. So I don't know. They kind of balance out. Like I don't really mind them being there, but also I wouldn't mind if they're not there at all. The Christines. I think she worked the best in the best Doctor Strange story in the MCU so far, which was actually What If, the Doctor Strange episode 4. But obviously she wasn't really in that either, because in that one she actually dies. Because that's what his story was. Instead of getting in a car accident and breaking his hands, the car accident kills her, and that was the one universe where they actually do work. But that's what ends the relationship. So it was a tragic story, but I do think that's the best singular story in the MCU with Strange so far. And I like Christine there. But anyway, let's talk about the other characters from 838, the Illuminati. And we already knew, well, I knew that this was going to be a thing in the movie from the trailers. They did give that away. And now, after seeing the movie, I wish they wouldn't have given that away and would have saved that for the movie. Because I think that was one of the, like, coolest surprises, or it could have been one of the biggest surprises of the movie. And that's another thing that like fucking sucked about the movie. The marketing was terrible. They gave away everything in the fucking trailers, which is the first Marvel movie that I think has done that. So I don't know why they did that. Um, but they did, and I was not a fan of that. Because usually whatever they show in the trailers, I always expect like if they showed that, imagine the fucking movie. But here, that just was the movie. It was just what the stuff they showed in the trailer. They didn't have anything more that was crazier or bigger or more exciting. So it made the actual like part of the movie not as big. So that kind of sucked. But I'm gonna talk about the characters in the Illuminati and like their role and what I thought about them. So the first one that we see obviously is when Strange and America go to the Sanctum Sanctorum. They are greeted by Mordo, who is the Sorcerer Supreme of that universe, because there's a statue of Doctor Strange, and at the bottom of it, it says that he died, giving his life defeating Thanos. So I don't know where Wong is in this universe. Maybe he also died in the fight against Thanos, but Mordo is the Sorcerer Supreme, and he greets them when they get there, and then he's the one that drugs them. And that scene and that was really cool. I like the way that they did that, and I really like this version of Mordo actually. I probably do like him more than the one from the other movie, because he has a humor to him, which is really cool, but also he does have that serious aspect as well that Mordo had in the original movie. The one thing I didn't like is that they mentioned Mordo like hunting down Strange and other sorcerers, but we never saw any of that shit, and we didn't see that Mordo at all. So I was kind of disappointed by that, because I was expecting to see some of that in this movie. Who knows? Maybe they're gonna save that for the next one. I don't know where that would fit, given what happens at the end of this movie, but I don't know. Like, we'll see, I guess. And plus, this other Mordo is still alive. But I don't know if we're gonna go back to that universe. Well, actually, maybe we will, but I'll talk about that later. And then that's when we meet Christine. We find out more about like the multiverse, how it works. There are some differences, a lot of similarities. And then Mordo takes Strange to a panel of people that are to judge him. Um, and the first one that we see is Captain Carter. She throws her shield at him because he's talking shit, Strange. And Mordo introduces everybody. And he calls Captain Carter the first Avenger, so that means we know there are other Avengers in this universe. And when they were fighting Thanos, they must have been there somewhere. Like probably if it's similar to our Infinity War, the Avengers were in Wakanda, and then the Illuminati was in on Titan fighting Thanos. And then we see Black Bolt, which that was a fucking big surprise to me, and probably my favorite surprise of the movie, because it's not only Black Bolt from the Inhumans, but also the same actor that played him in the Inhumans show on ABC, which is probably the worst fucking Marvel thing that's been released since like Blade came out. Well, actually, I don't know about that, but definitely the worst MCU fucking project. So bad that I couldn't even get through the first episode. So I never thought I would see this dude again as Black Bolt, or even to see the Inhumans, but we did. So that was fucking cool. And he actually was my favorite member of the Illuminati, so that was fucking awesome to see. And they gave him his costume from the comics, and it looked badass to me. So that was all well done. And then we see Maria Rambeau, Captain Marvel. So in this universe, Carol Danvers didn't become Captain Marvel; it was Maria, and she's credited as Defender of the Cosmos by Mordo. And at first, in the far shot when we first get into that room, I thought she was Black Panther, like a version of Black Panther, but she had like a black and silver suit. So I was like, oh shit, is that T'Challa? Like another version of T'Challa? But that didn't end up being the case. There was an empty seat, so that could have been like a Black Panther, or it could have been somebody else like Namor from Atlantis. Um, Maybe Iron Man from that universe was a different Iron Man, and he's the one that made the Ultron bots that we see there as like the little guards or whatever, security. But it's also possible that Reed Richards is the one that made the Ultron bots in this universe, which is why they actually ended up working, because they do credit him as the smartest man alive, and he is the next person that is introduced, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. Um, and that was a minor surprise to me that they actually did cast John Krasinski, which was the biggest like fan casting for Reed Richards online. So that was cool to see, and I think he did a good job. I really liked his energy. He's definitely a different Fantastic, or Mr. Fantastic, from the OG, from the two movies that came out with Chris Evans as Human Torch. But he seems to be an older version, so makes sense. He already has two kids, so it would make sense that he is a little bit more on the serious side, especially given the context of this movie, what's going on. But I liked his suit. I liked how he looked. I liked the beard, everything. Um, Watching it this time though, I did notice that the actual Fantastic Four logo on the chest, on a close up, it has like a pattern design behind the four, which it's just too busy for me. Like I didn't like that aspect, but overall, like the main design of the suit, I think is cool. It probably doesn't need to be like black and blue the way that it is. Like I think it would be fine if it was just blue, but I didn't mind it though. Like I thought it looked cool. Um, and then the last, of course, but not least, that we see is Charles Xavier. And it's interesting because they don't mention anything about the X-Men or his school for mutants, or mutants at all. Actually, they don't mention it at all. Um, I don't know if they credit him as the leader of the Illuminati, but all I know is that Mordo said like the last member of the team or something like that, Professor Charles Xavier. And he comes out and the X-Men animated series music plays, which was also really interesting. And obviously, he has the fucking hover chair from that series, which I didn't ever really watch, but I know a lot of people really love that series. So I thought that was a cool touch to add in there. And I liked him in the movie. I thought he was cool. It was a cool way to see him return as Charles Xavier. And I like the line that he repeated from Days of Future Past, which is like, I think probably my favorite X-Men movie. Um, where in that movie he tells the younger version of himself through the time travel mechanics of that movie that just because somebody loses their way doesn't mean that they're lost forever. And he says this here talking about Strange because his version of Strange actually is the one that ruined a fucking universe to stop Thanos, which I didn't even mention. So he would have been on the team before Mordo as like the sixth member of the Illuminati if there was only six before. But they say that he caused an incursion, which is when two universes like get so close to each other that either one or both of them just fucking completely gets destroyed. And he did this because he searched the multiverse for ways to defeat Thanos. And the way that he like found was using the Book of Vishanti, which he did use, I believe, and he is the one that like killed Thanos. I think is what they explain it as. But in the process, he destroyed another universe, and for that, he realizes that he needs to like pay for his crime. And Black Bolt kills him from his own wishes. That's when we see Black Bolt's power. He has the power to fucking destroy a whole planet with just his voice, but he kills by vaporizing Doctor Strange by just whispering to him, "I'm sorry." And that shit was crazy. Like the sound design on that was really cool. Um, and it was pretty cool having that like kind of cameo from Thanos, just seeing his dead body there on Titan. And it shows also how close the fucking Avengers were in Infinity War of defeating him there. It was just that one fucking thing from Star Lord and Nebula where they fucking broke Mantis's control or hold on him. So they could have defeated him there in the first movie too in the main MCU timeline, but obviously that didn't work out there. But now I'm just gonna rank all of the members of the Illuminati in this movie. And like I said already, Black Bolt's my favorite because he's fucking powerful as shit, and I liked his costume. He even had a little fucking gliding wings when he landed. And then my second favorite would probably be Reed Richards because he seemed to have a lot of like knowledge. He, I think, designed a lot of the shit that is there in the headquarters. And he's also like a new version of him, and our first in like foray into the Fantastic Four in the MCU. And I thought it was a good first run. Third favorite, of course, Professor X. He's always fucking cool. Fourth would be Mordo. I really liked this version of Mordo, his whole demeanor and everything. I do wish that he had a better fight with Doctor Strange. I do get that they wanted to do something different with him and Strange by having them actually not rely on their magic. So they did a fist fight, a one-on-one, hand-to-hand. But I mean, it wasn't that good, so I would have just preferred if they just had a fucking magic battle. Like, it's a fucking sorcerer. He is a sorcerer. Of course, there's gonna be magic battles. Like, we don't need to have some magic battles, some non-magic battles. We just need to have variation of what magic is being done. Um, I don't think it's boring if they just do it right. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, but it was cool to see that he did still, this version of Mordo did still have the little shoes that he was wearing in the first movie, where he would like fucking run on the air with it. It has like the little I don't know, like I guess little platforms that it makes on its own. So this Mordo definitely liked whatever artifact that was. Um, and then he also had some sort of sword, which was pretty cool. But he's my fourth favorite member, and then fifth I would say is probably Captain Marvel, Maria Rambeau. I also feel like they kind of did her dirty too, because they didn't like the fight with her and Wanda wasn't as crazy as it could have been. And I'm gonna go into that right now too, right after I finish my ranking. But I did like how like confident she was. Like she did share that characteristic with Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. Like both of them are like really cocky. I don't think Maria was like that in Captain Marvel in the movie. Captain Marvel as a human, but she definitely has that demeanor here. And it was to her own downfall. But I did like that about her. Like she was very confident. And my least favorite member was Captain Carter. And if I was like including What If in my ranking, like the What If version of her, she would probably be my second favorite right after Black Bolt. But because this version of Captain Carter was like completely different from the What If version, and it just wasn't that good. Like I don't know what about it, but she wasn't like as interesting or even as fun as Captain Carter was in What If. So she didn't really stand out to me, and I didn't really like the look of it. But I thought about it just recently that the jetpack that she had on her um actually could have some like major implications for her story in the MCU and whatever universe this is. And I don't know if it's the same universe as her story from What If. It could be like the that future for her, but it also could be just a completely different one. But I think her jetpack could be a remnant of the Hydra Stomper that Steve had from World War II, because at the end of What If, we see when she goes back to her universe, she's in the 2014 era from the main MCU timeline, the Winter Soldier movie. And instead of finding the Winter Soldier, she finds the Hydra Stomper, and Steve Rogers like was on ice in the mech suit, so she was gonna reunite with him, and that might be like the next time we see the What If version of Captain Carter, as like her continuation of her story in an episode for season 2 of that show. Um, but it could be that if this is a different universe, that didn't happen and Steve did die, but she had a piece of the mech suit, and that is the jetpack that she wears in the show. So that's actually kind of cool, or that she wears in the movie. I mean, because the mech suit had little like jet engine thing, and it was a big fucking jetpack. So it could be from the Hydra Stomper mech suit, which would be cool, a cool way to honor Steve, because he would be dead at this point. And maybe either way, it could be the same universe still. Just like in Civil War, old Peggy died. It could be that Steve died like later on. Um, so that actually is kind of cool, and made me like the jetpack more when I thought about it. But anyway, on to the actual fight between Wanda and the Illuminati. I thought overall this sequence was really cool. Um, but it could have been better. It was cool because of how shocking the violence was. Like they didn't hold back at all, except for some of the visuals. But it just happens too fucking like quick, which made it lame. Like it should have been a fucking badass fight, but it's one that I think would be very forgettable. Like just the Illuminati themselves are gonna be remembered, I think, for a long time in the MCU, but the fight is not gonna be remembered, which sucks because a lot of these people are the fucking most powerful characters that we've seen in the MCU. But Wanda just fucking takes them all out right away, which shows like her power or how fucking like on her toes, quick on her toes she is, that she could get through these situations like easy. But I feel like they should have still given her more of a fight, you know, and it would have made it seem more natural that like later on she starts limping, cause she seemed fucking fine in the whole fight, but then she's just limping out of nowhere. So they should have shown some of that damage happen to her in the actual fight. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, but I did like that they fully went for all those deaths and how gruesome they were. Um, she fucking pops Black Bolt's head. Mr. Fantastic fucked up, bro, telling her his fucking power. Like he was just trying to intimidate her to try to talk her down from pursuing America anymore. But he shouldn't have, bro. They should have fucking listened to Strange and taken her seriously, which they did not. And just like how I said with Captain Marvel, that was their all of their downfall. Um, but he's like, Black Bolt could kill you with one whisper of his mouth, and then she's like, "What mouth?" And she fucking closed his shit like Neo in the Matrix, and he fucking freaks out and like screams, but the fucking sound back bounces back in his fucking head, and it caves in his skull. That shit was crazy. And then right after that, Mr. Fantastic, he acts. He's like, "What the fuck?" And he fucking goes, tries to get her, and she fucking spaghettis this dude, bro. That shit was crazy. She and bro, he had it the worst. Probably his death was probably the most painful because she fucking like tore him apart, and he fucking felt that shit, and then she fucking popped his fucking head like a balloon. That shit was crazy, and then he was just fucking on the ground afterward, just there. But bro, some of these fucking interactions and the deaths that happened didn't make sense, bro. And it was kind of like cringy. Like I never thought Marvel would do something that is so like kind of like bad, like not realistic. Fucking Captain Marvel and Captain Carter were both just standing there when Wanda fucking off Black Bolt and Reed Richards, and then it was not until after that they fucking move. Like they're literally just fucking watching the whole time, and then at least they fucking have coordination with each other, and they go in opposite directions so that they could distract Wanda and try to get the upper hand. Um, but Captain Carter was she should have fucking died first because she can't do shit against Wanda, bro. She should have smoked her right away. Um, and I didn't really like the like callback to Captain America. I could do this all day because I feel like that should have been or that should be a Steve Rogers thing, not a Captain America thing. So she shouldn't have said it. Sam shouldn't say it. Nobody but Steve should say that phrase. So I thought that was a little bit like on the nose. Like it was okay. I didn't like cringe at it in the movie, but it just did uh kind of put me off a little bit because she never said it before, and I'm not sure if Steve said it in the Captain Carter episode of What If, but it wouldn't make sense for her to say it unless she got it from him at the very least. But anyway, um, I also don't buy Captain Marvel's death because she kills the other two, and then she fucking throws Captain Carter's shield through her, fucking cutting her in half, which that was crazy. They don't show it, but we obviously know, and then we fucking see it hit the wall, and the blood is coming down off the shield, which is crazy. They like fucking one up the blood on the shield from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The blood was actually dripping this time. Um, but I don't know, like that was kind of crazy because as a super soldier, she should have been able to catch that like no problem. So I don't know why it just went through her and lets this version of Captain Carter somehow was not a super soldier. Um, and that's also why she had the jetpack. I don't know. It wouldn't make sense, but it is possible. I don't know. So that was just kind of a weird way for her to die. But the one that I really didn't buy was Captain Marvel's death because she she could fucking take a fucking statue to the face. Like that should be no problem for her. She's like super powerful. Somebody said that Wanda was draining her power, which that would make more sense to me. But when I watched it this time, I was looking for it, and I never got the sense that Wanda was taking her power away, like how she did to Agatha and WandaVision. All I saw was that she was breaking down her fucking costume the way that she also did to Thanos in Endgame when she was breaking it apart piece by piece. But I never got the sense that she was draining her power or like absorbing her power. So she should have been able to survive that statue falling on her, but she didn't. So I don't know. I didn't like that, and the fight itself just wasn't that cool. Um, and then afterward, they do the whole horror trope of the characters being fucking stupid, and Strange, Christine, and America are running away from Wanda, but then they like put a fucking trap door down. But when the door goes down, like before, Wanda was just going through all of them, but this time she doesn't, and they think that they should stop for some reason instead of keep going. Like whatever Wanda's doing, they're just fucking wasting time. Like that shit didn't make any sense. So I didn't like that because Marvel never does some stupid shit like that. So I don't know why they did it here. I don't know if it was because it's a horror trope and they gotta do the trope because it's supposed to be horror. But that's a lame excuse. So I didn't like that shit. That was dumb as fuck. But anyway, then they go to the Gap Junction in this universe or whatever, and they get to the book, but it ends up not being useful at all because Wanda just gets there and destroys that book after one of the sorcerers destroyed the Darkhold back on in the main timeline, which is why she had to dreamwalk. Um, and then this is when she throws Strange and Christine into the other universe that we see in the movie, which some people believe to be the universe that 838 Strange destroyed, caused an incursion in, because he does mention that he lost some sort of battle, and we got the sense that there was a battle between two strangers, and the one that lost is the one that the incursion happened to, and that's why 838 Strange like sacrifices himself basically. So this could be like the match. It could be 838 and then the universe that Strange and Christine end up in. And then Wanda takes America and puts her back into the main MCU, and then lets go of 838 Wanda, and then she goes back home. But the cool thing about the ending was like Zombie Strange when he fucking dreamwalks. That shit was cool as hell. And as soon as like he said he was gonna do that, I was like, he's gonna possess the body because I know obviously that Zombie Strange was in the movie. And that shit was fucking cool as hell when the souls of the damned come, and then he fucking uses them to make a fucking cloak of the dead. That shit was fucking metal as shit and so fucking cool. And when he was fucking flying in the air towards Wondergore Mountain, that shit looked like a dragon. That shit was dope. And that shit made up for the whack ass fight at the end. That shit was really cool. I wish there was an actual fight between him and Wanda, the Scarlet Witch. There was like kind of a fight, but it was more just kind of like holding her, but then she fucking blasts it, and then that's it. Like, she's got the upper hand the whole fucking movie. They're pretty much just slowing her down. They don't ever really pose a real threat to her. But it was still cool though, and I like the design of the zombie too. It was kind of funny, but zombies always are kind of funny, just the way they move, how stiff they are. But I really thought it was well done. Um, so now I'm just gonna talk about some theories that I have. But the first one is gonna actually go back to like WandaVision with what this movie taught us about the multiverse. I want to think about something that happened there, which is with Ralph Boner or Uncle Pete Pietro Quicksilver, because in WandaVision we got the sense that Ralph was like a cast member on Wanda's like sitcom reality as her brother, but it was like a different body. He looked different, and he looked like the X-Men Quicksilver. So it was weird because he wasn't the X-Men Quicksilver because his powers looked like the MCU version of his powers. So what I think now is, now that we see Professor X in the 838 universe, and all the other characters in that universe look like how they look in the main MCU timeline in the 616 universe. Like we see Maria Rambeau, she's the same actress. We see Captain Carter, she's Peggy Carter is played by Haley Atwell, and Mordo is also the same actor. The only person that it was different was Captain Marvel. Instead of being Carol, it was whatchamacallit. But no, not her. It was Black Bolt, and he actually also was the same as the Inhuman show, which is supposed to be MCU, or at least like MCU adjacent. So that's four people. And then we see Reed Richards. He's different. We've never seen him in the MCU, but it would make sense that he looks like he's not the same as the Fantastic Four OG movie Fantastic Four, because that has nothing to do with the MCU. Um, but we do see Professor X, and he is the same actor. So what I think that would mean is that Professor X is a Nexus being, just like Wanda, where he looks the same or is the same in every universe. Um, which is pretty cool because that means he could be the Professor X of the MCU even going forward in the main timeline 616. As long as Patrick Stewart wants to do it, obviously. But the reason why Mr. Fantastic couldn't be the same actor is because the way I think about the multiverse in the MCU is twofold. I think there's two different types of multiverses. One of them is like how they did it in Spider-Man No Way Home, where every time there's a new actor, they're completely different universes. Like there's nothing the same, they're completely different, and that's why there's a different actor portraying them. So we had Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. They're all three completely different universes, completely different casts of characters and events. So I believe that the Fantastic Four movies, actually all three of them, so the two that were a sequel and original, that's one universe, and then they made that other one in I think 2015. That's a whole different universe version, and then now we get the MCU version with John Krasinski. Those are all completely different universes, nothing to do with each other, just same characters but different actors playing them. And then on the other hand, with the multiverse, I think we have branches of the same universe, which is just like different timelines, branches in the timeline. And I think that's what we've seen the most of in the MCU, starting with Loki, and then going into What If, where everything in the universe is the same, but at some point there's one small difference that creates a branch, and that timeline, because of that one change, everything else in the future is affected, and it continues to change through the future, which is why in Loki, the TVA, their whole job was to clip that branch so that it doesn't happen, because that's what causes the madness of the multiverse. But because of the end of that show, when Sylvie kills He Who Remains, the one that was in control of the TVA, nobody's there to do that anymore. So that's why things are starting to get all crazy and crossing over, including different timelines with each other, but also different universes, like with the 3 Spider-Man universes, which threaten to be even more than just those 3 universes. So since Professor X did look the same, I think he has to be a Nexus being. And then back to the like Ralph Boner theory. That's why Evan Peters is different, because he is not a Nexus being. So even though he is from the X-Men universe, only Professor X looks the same. And obviously Aaron Taylor Johnson and Evan Peters are 2 different universe versions of Quicksilver. So the X-Men universe is completely different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All the events are different, but they are the same character. But Ralph Boner, I believe now, was just a regular dude in the MCU, but he was a doppelganger of Evan Peters' Quicksilver from the X-Men franchise. But because somewhere out there in the multiverse, this dude has the same body as a version of Quicksilver, I think that Wanda gave him the powers of her Pietro's Quicksilver. But because he had the same body, his body was able to handle the powers that was given to him. So it's like a weird case, a very unique case of the way the multiverse works. But that's kind of what I think is happening now from WandaVision, because it doesn't really make sense any other way now, I don't think, because Wanda didn't have the power to actually move people through the multiverse on her own. She could control like demons from other universes, and then she could also dream walk, possess her own alternate self, but she cannot bring people in, which is what my original theory was, that she actually brought the X-Men Quicksilver into the MCU. But I don't think that's what it would have been now, because it doesn't fit with this movie. And I think Wanda's connection to Pietro allows her to give Ralph his powers, similar to how she created Vision in the X, because all of them came from the Mind Stone, or at least were affected by the Mind Stone. Like Wanda's powers were amplified by the Mind Stone, and that's when either Pietro got his powers, or when his powers also, were unlocked. So because of her connection with the Mind Stone, like part of it, she said, lives in her, she was able to give those powers of Pietro's to Ralph Boner, which is how he was able to basically be Quicksilver in the Hex. So that's just a new updated theory about that. I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't see him in this show, and that was another thing that like I feel like didn't make sense, or they could have done more with. Like in all the different universes that Wanda was seeing, they were all just her and her kids. We didn't see no other visions, We didn't see a universe where her brother was alive. Nothing like that. So that was a little bit like unbelievable. Like I feel like there would have been some where they were there, but it is what it is. It does make me think or wonder like who the twins' father was in these universes, specifically in the 838 universe, because it seemed like because the Ultron bots worked, Ultron himself, like the villain Ultron, would have never existed, and because he wouldn't have existed, Vision also would have never been created. So I wonder where her kids come from. It's an interesting question, and maybe who knows? Maybe they are also not real, just like the 616 version. Maybe she did just create them, but then I don't know like what the reasoning would have been because in the main timeline she did it because she was planning a life with Vision. So it does add some more questions that hopefully we get answers to at some point, or we see like other versions of this. But I don't know. The other thing I want to talk about is like the use of the Darkhold and the Black Fingers thing, and then also the third eye that Strange has in the movie. Those two things I think might be related, but they also might be like somewhat different things. But the people that we've seen that had black fingers were all people that used the Darkhold. So I think that happens from overexposure to the Darkhold or overuse of it. And Agatha had the black fingers in WandaVision when she revealed herself as a witch. In this movie, Wanda had black fingers, so she's been using the book for a long time now, looking at other universes. And then we also see 838 Strange, who we also know used the Darkhold before he died. He had black fingers. So it could be related to multiversal exploration, like just people who look to other universes through the Darkhold could have this effect where their fingers turn black. Because Agatha could have seen, using the Darkhold spells, that X-Men universe version of Quicksilver, which is why she possessed Ralph in the Hex. But she's not the one that gave him the powers. I do think that Wanda was the one that gave him the powers, and then she just possessed him to like see through him, basically, which is similar to how Wanda was able to possess her own body. She could obviously see through it. She could also see outside of it too, which is kind of interesting. But I think it's a similar effect. So I think that's where the black fingers come from. As for the third eye, my theory about that is that the third eye grows from the knowledge that you gain simply from living in a destroyed universe. Because the times that we've seen the third eye, the first time was actually in What If with Strange Supreme, which was the evil version of that Doctor Strange episode, where he wanted absolute power so that he could bring Christine back to life. When the Watcher goes to him for help against Ultron with the Infinity Stones, he walks out and he has a third eye in the shadow. But this was obviously after his universe was destroyed, so he's been just in this little bubble. And then we see the third eye. We never see it, I don't think, in the episode before that, or in the actual fourth episode, because that episode was episode 8 when the Watcher goes to him for help. And then we see Sinister Strange in the destroyed world in this movie. And once again, it's a destroyed world. He has the eye. And then the only other person that we see with it is the 616 Doctor Strange in the post-credit scene or at the end of the movie. I think the only reason why he grew the third eye is because I think that the Sinister Strange who had the third eye survived when he fell and got impaled on the gate on the bottom of the Sanctum Sanctorum, because when Christine goes to him, the eye opens up. So obviously he wasn't dead, or at least part of him wasn't dead. The eye opened up. So what I think is that he actually dreamwalked into 616 Strange. And the way that he would have been able to do this is that in the first Doctor Strange movie, we find out that Strange has a crazy ability to recall information, like just random information. So he probably has like a photographic memory or just a fucking crazy memory, crazy good memory. So he read the Darkhold. He probably just memorizes the fucking spell to dreamwalk. I don't know if this version of Strange did dreamwalk, because if it is the one that went against 838 Strange, 838 Strange is the one that dreamwalked. We don't know if this one did, but maybe he read the spell. He never actually did it until now. And I think just the act of him dreamwalking into 616 Strange is what the eye represents. Like it opens up because it's not 616 Strange, it's Sinister Strange. Um, but I think the only way that you could get that third eye is just from knowing what you need to know, or what you learn when you fuck up your universe, or your universe is just fucked up from an incursion. It could also possibly be just that causing one gives you a third eye, but I don't think that makes as much sense. Um, but if that is what it is, then 616 Strange just grew it, because when we see Clea come in the post credit scene, she tells him he caused an incursion, and and maybe that's like when it actually happened, when the third eye appears, the incursion is like starting or whatever. I didn't really like that post credit scene because I feel like the design of Clea's costume was kind of like, I don't know, it looked kind of like cheap, like a Power Rangers villain or something. And maybe I'm just thinking about that like recent Power Rangers movie with Elizabeth Banks, who was also a blonde, and she was a fucking cringy villain. So when I saw Charlize Theron, I just thought about that, or I also just kind of thought about the Fast and Furious character that she has, and I just can't take those movies serious anymore. So when I saw her here, I was like, I don't know, it was kind of cheesy to me, but also I don't really know anything about her too, so her being there didn't really excite me in any way, because I don't really know anything about her except that she does come from the dark dimension, which she opens up that like little portal, she cuts through the fucking like reality or whatever, because that's where she's from, and they're probably gonna use dark dimension magic to fix the incursion that he caused. And what I'm guessing the incursion is an incursion in the 838 universe, because since Wanda went there and fucking killed all the heroes, it's probably gonna fuck everything up for that timeline. So that's probably what the incursion that he caused was. But I guess we'll find out for sure at some point in the future. This was something else that I was like confused about in the movie. Like I thought the movie was gonna be a response or a reaction or a consequence to what happened in No Way Home with that spell. When the multiverse like it actually fucking did crack open in that movie. But I guess he kind of like wrapped everything up and fixed it in that movie as well. So this movie was a completely different thing. They were like seemingly unrelated. Um, but I don't know, because I would think that would have caused an incursion, because that shit was crazy, because that was three fucking universes colliding into each other in No Way Home, because it was Andrew's, Toby's, and Tom's universes. But yeah, maybe it's just that they fixed it. Like they sent everybody away, and their memories were wiped. So that's why it didn't cause an incursion. I don't know. Or maybe that is the incursion that was caused. But if that was the case, I don't know why Clea would have shown up so late. in the movie, like at the very end. So I do think the incursion is more likely the 838 universe, which would be kind of interesting because it would mean that 838 Strange destroyed Sinister Strange's universe, causing an incursion there, and then now his universe is also going to have an incursion caused by our main 616 Strange. I mean, technically it was caused by Wanda, but she might be gone somewhere, or Clea might be more inclined to like work with Strange. Um, Maybe Wanda's fucking scary, so she didn't even want to fuck with that. Um, and maybe Clea just knows about Strange from her uncle, who is Dormammu, the leader of the Dark Dimension. So we might see Dormammu return. But that's pretty much all I have to say um, now about that. I'll just briefly want to rank the Doctor Stranges that we see in this movie, the different variants. Number one is definitely Zombie Strange with the fucking Defender variant corpse Dream walked into by the 616 Strange. The fucking cloak of the dead, you could call it. Second would probably be 616 Strange since we see him do the most in this movie. And he did seem to have a lot of like realm pulling, like pulling different creatures from different realms, which we were introduced to in What If, which I thought that was kind of interesting too, because the What If version was a different version of Strange, and we never saw this version do that. So it was interesting that he was just able to do that, and we never saw it before. But I guess it's not anything too crazy to like think too much about. But it was pretty cool, like little like dragon things that he had, which might have been the same ones from What If. I'm not sure. They look smaller, but it could be the same thing. I don't know. Um, Third would be Sinister Strange. I thought Sinister Strange was really cool. The way that he talked was different. Like Benedict Cumberbatch's acting was really cool with the different Strange variants, and that one really stood out a lot because he had like a deeper like darkness to him. That was really cool, and I thought he also just looked cool. Like I think the wig was really good. I think for that one, and just his whole like demeanor. Um, Fourth would be 838 Strange, which we just saw him pretty much die, but he was at least noble enough to sacrifice himself and like be accountable for his actions. So that was cool. And then last would be Defender Strange because he was gonna just fucking kill America in the beginning of the movie, which is not a fucking heroic thing. I don't know why they called him Defender Strange. They should have called him fucking I don't know Offender Strange because he was offensive for wanting to take America's powers. That shit was kind of crazy, low key in the beginning. Um, but it shows like the difference of our Strange, 616 Strange, who is the most heroic version, which makes sense that it would be the main universe version. So yeah, that's my ranking of the Doctor Stranges that we see in this movie. If I was to throw in Strange Supreme from What If, he would definitely be number one. He's the most fucking OP Strange by far. Um, but now I just want to talk about like all the different universes that we see in that montage. So we do see like 20 universes in that montage, and then we also see America's Home, which I don't know if that counts as as another universe, because I don't know if that even is a universe. Like if she actually lives in the Gap Junction somewhere, which is possible, but it could be another universe. I'm not sure. And then we obviously see Sinister Strange's universe, which is a separate one from all of the other 20. Um, it was also cool that that universe seemed to actually be a future to the 616 timeline, because Sinister Strange tells 616 Strange that it was shortly after Christine's wedding that he started doing his like exploration into the multiverse, because he was like thinking back on the way he failed with Christine, and he wanted to actually make it right, which is what I think helps 616 Strange that we see make a different call, because obviously he saw what happened. So because of this, he could have just destroyed his own universe, and maybe he wasn't the one that was caused by 838 Strange, but we don't know. Maybe it'll get answered in the future, maybe not. But I want to talk about some of the universes that we did see. I'm not sure what the first one was, but it could have been like some sort of puzzle universe where like things are not connected. It's just a bunch of like separate objects. And I think that's the first one that we see when Strange tackles America through the portal when they were in Kamar Taj. And then it goes to a fucking like space realm with the Living Tribunal, and it's like a different version of the Living Tribunal from the statues that we've seen in Loki and now in the Thor Love and Thunder trailer, because that one is the three heads that are all connected and just face different ways. But here, when we saw the actual living version of the Living Tribunal, it was three separate heads that were facing different directions. So that was kind of crazy. A cool first look at that. I hope we get to see him again and like actually in a scene at some point in a future movie. But they've definitely been like ramping up the Living Tribunal. He was originally supposed to make an appearance in Infinity War when Doctor Strange was fighting Thanos on Titan, but they ended up cutting that, which I'm fine with. And then we see some sort of like light universe, like it's just like this fucking light, and then everything else is just like blank. And then we see some sort of ice universe, or at least that's what it looked like to me. Then we see a universe with some giant fucking bees, like a fucking bee colony. I don't know what the hell that was. Then we see one where they're in water, and then after that they fucking bring some of the fish from the water into a version of New York, which maybe is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe. Since Sam Raimi did direct this movie and he also directed those, it could have been a little Easter egg tie to that. It's not clear. Like I don't think it's definitely Tobey's universe, but it would be cool to think about it as that. And we do see obviously Bruce Campbell in this movie, who was in all three of those movies. It would have been cool to see him here as like Mysterio or a version of Mysterio from those movies, but he was just Pizza Papa. But then obviously the post credits at the very end was a nod to the Evil Dead 2, which was cool for Sam Raimi fans. But his cameo wasn't that good here. Like I didn't care for it. It was cool to see him, but it definitely wasn't as good as the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies cameos or whatever. After New York, we see a universe that is like seems to be like a future Stark Bot apocalypse universe, because the Stark Bots from Spider-Man Far From Home were just flying around, and there's like a white ass city. I didn't see any people, but that was kind of interesting. And then we see some sort of like fucking skeleton universe where everything's made out of bones. And then we see this what could be the Savage Land from the comics, which I think is like a pocket dimension in the comics. But we see the dinosaurs here, so I'm pretty sure that's probably what it's supposed to be. And then they go to an animated universe, which was like a cell shaded animation style, which was different from like the What If stuff. And I'm not sure if the What If like universes are actually supposed to be animated, like when you compare it to the live action stuff, or if it's just the way that it's presented to us, but in their universe they look like real people. I don't know. But that was funny. Like the music when they went through the animated universe was funny. And then they go to something, I don't know what it was. It could be like um, the MCU version. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. Of Hel, Hel, from Asgard. The only reason why I say that is because there's some sort of green smoke, and Hela is the ruler of Hell, and she had a green like magic to her in Thor Ragnarok. So it could be that I don't think we've ever seen Hell in the MCU. Loki thought that he went there when he went into the void and in the Loki show, but he did not actually go there. So we've never seen it unless this is it. So I don't know. Then they go into the cube universe where like their fucking bodies just a bunch of separated cubes, which could be an Easter egg to House of M from the comics when Wanda goes mad there. And then from there, they're in a fucking paint universe where they're just fucking paint people, which America said she's actually been through before, and that it's fucking hard to eat like that, which I'd imagine it is when you're just a fucking pile of some sort of fluid. And then they go into this black and white universe, and they recently released a still of that one, and it's actually a universe where Hydra seems to have won World War II and like took over the world, which is why it's so dark. So that's kind of cool. Um, it would be cool to go to that universe again and like actually see some of that stuff. Maybe it could be a what if episode. Um, it's like ripped straight out of that concept. I would totally like to see that. Somebody did remind me online that we saw something like that already in Agents of Shield through the framework, which was a virtual reality version of things where Hydra did win, but I think it was Hydra winning like the Winter Soldier, like actually completing Project Insight, where they fucking assassinated everybody they wanted to. But this would have been Hydra winning way back in World War II, which would have changed fucking everything. So I think this would actually be cooler. Um, and we saw a universe that looked like ancient ruins or something, and then the opposite of that, some sort of like advanced technology future universe. And then there was just this white universe. The last few happened like back to back to back, like super quick, even faster than all the other ones. So it's just a white universe. It looks very like I don't know, like office, like fucking dull ass fucking office spaces, like just white, like a fucking hospital or some shit. Um, and then the last the last one before they arrived to 838, I think could be hell because there's like some fucking lava and shit spilling out, and it's like red, and I think that could actually be Cathan's realm, a fiery red like we see in Wanda's garden when Strange first goes to Wanda, and she reveals that she is the Scarlet Witch, and the fucking white and nice like plants were just a cover, and everything there is dead because of the Darkhold. Because Strange says the Darkhold corrupts everything and everyone around it. Um, and we do find out that Cathan is the one that wrote the Darkhold. He's name dropped by Wong when he takes Wanda to Wundagore Mountain. So this realm could be his realm. That's where he is. So he could be like a hybrid with Mephisto. Like they could be combining those characters, and he could be like the ruler of hell, like Satan is in Christianity. Um, but if that is the case, or either way, even if he's just Catan and Mephisto is completely separate from that, I'm disappointed that they mentioned Catan as the creator of the Darkhold and Wundagore Mountain, but he didn't actually turn out to be the villain of the movie, like the main villain, or that we didn't actually see him in any way. But we did see those creatures who are like modeled after Catan that were there at the mountain. Um, So I don't know. It was kind of lame. Like I think they could have done more with that. They could have at least teased him. Like I think that would have been something cool to see in that post credit scene. Um, but I guess it's because this is not Wanda's movie. This is Doctor Strange's movie still. So they wanted to put more of the focus on him. But fuck it, they should have just made it a Scarlet Witch movie. That would have been better. But we also see, I think, that realm when America like finally steps up and like fully accesses her powers by will. Um, she's trying to smack Wanda to another universe, and that universe opens up. So I think it could be like a version of hell that is Katan's realm. It would have been cool if they like teased it there or somewhere like that there was monsters there. But I don't know. Um, I do think that the the like etchings on the wall um, on Wonder Girl Mountain were the Scarlet Witch, and then there's like two boys on each side of her. Those are probably Tommy and Billy. So I hope that does mean that we will see them again in the future. As Wiccan and Speed, which we didn't see any of their powers at all in this movie. We did see it in WandaVision, but hopefully the next time we see them, they'll be teenagers, and we'll see them actually be real like characters or people in the actual 616 universe. That's pretty much all I have to say. Um, Overall, the movie was pretty cool. It had a lot of cool stuff. Could have done a lot more with it, but I still enjoyed it. So I'll say my score for the movie is a 7.5 out of 10. Go check it out if you haven't yet. If you don't want to go to the theaters, it should be on Disney Plus pretty soon. I think like maybe June 15th around there somewhere. So you can wait then. But thank you for watching my video, and I will catch you next time. Peace.